This land is your land, and this land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters, this land was made for you and me.
Welcome to Archival. I am your host, Juanita Tolliver, and sorry, that's my dog, Josephine, coming through. Scoot, Joe. All right, here we go. Second attempt. Welcome to Archival. I am your host, Juanita Tolliver, and I'm doing my best probing an internal investigation to understand why I know this song. Why do so many of us know this one song that Woody Guthrie wrote in February 1940, more than 85 years ago? This Land Is Your Land is probably the first and one of the few folk songs that I ever learned. And I'm almost 100% confident that I learned it at school, elementary school specifically. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and I know I sang this song with my elementary school class choir during a school program. I have no idea what program would have prompted my class to sing this classic folk song, and that explicit notion is why I need to know why this song is intertwined in so many of our lives and childhoods and seemingly ingrained in American culture. Truly, is this song something of an elementary school rite of passage across the nation? Or does every person who experienced some portion of their childhood in the American South know this song? There's also the people who grew up going camping, because I heard that this song was a classic campfire song, but I can't confirm that. Let's be clear. I've only gone camping once, and I was absolutely not interested in singing when I went. I promise. That is something I will never do again. So how exactly did this Woody Guthrie song permeate American culture so deeply and consistently across space and time? It may be because this song originated as something of a diss track. Please note that this episode features Woody Guthrie interview clips where he uses harmful descriptors like the word colored in reference to Black and Indigenous people. This is Archival. Woody Guthrie was born in Okemah, Oklahoma in 1912, 87 years after the Osage Nation and the Quapaw Nation were removed from their land by the United States government. 10 years after the town was named after an indigenous chief, and only 5 years after Oklahoma became the 45th state in the United States. Here's how Woody described Okemah, Oklahoma during an interview recording session with Alan Lomax for the Department of Interior Radio Broadcasting Division in March 1940.
What kind of a place was Okemah? How big was it? Well, you remember it when you were a kid.
Well, in them days, his little town about 1,500, and then 2,000. A few years later, it got up to about 5,000, Struck some pretty rich oil pools all around there at Garrison City and Slick City and Cromwell and Seminole and Bowlegs and Sand Springs and Spring Hill and...
Well, what kind of people lived in Okemah?
Oh, just sort of a farming class of people. The town didn't amount to much except on a Saturday, you know, when all the farming people would come in there to have a trades day or give away a new buggy and a box of tobacco or buy him a new pair of button shoes, but the population, the people that live there, right now is about 1/4 Indians, and 1/4 Negroes, and 1/2 white.
Do all those people mix on pretty equal terms or not? How does it go?
Well, no, not what I'd call equal terms.
Growing up in Okemah, Woody was already aware of inequality among Black, Indigenous, and white people. His childhood also included a series of tragic losses for his family. Their home burned down only a few days after his father finished building it. One of his sisters died in another fire incident at home. Woody's mother suffered from Huntington's disease, and she was institutionalized when he was 17 years old. And the compounding trauma he experienced was eased slightly by his love and talent for music and rambling. He learned how to tap into his musical abilities from Black people around Okemah. Here's how Woody described it to Alan Lomax.
There are some crazy way they've got of looking at the colored situation. Ever since I was a kid growing up, I've always found time to stop and talk to these colored people because I found them to be full of jokes, what I mean, and wisdom. I learned how to play a French harp off a boy that shined shoes down there. I was passing a barbershop one day when I was about 15 or 16 years old, and there's a big barefooted boy up laying in there, and had his feet turned up towards me, and he was playing the harmonica. He was playing the railroad blues.
Now, am I surprised that the core of Woody's musical style is rooted in the casual harmonic musings of a Black person? Absolutely not. But I am surprised that Woody publicly credited this unnamed barefoot person in 1940.
It was on a warm summer's day, and he's laying up there barefooted, and I just had my shoes off a couple of months and just about tough enough then, to where I could run through cuckleburrs and broke bottles and wade through the liquor bottles up and down the back alleys in town there after whiskey got to be pretty popular. And I says, boy, I said, that's undoubtedly the lonesomest piece of music that I ever run on to in my life. Where in the world did you learn it? Oh, he said, I just lay here and listen to the railroad whistle, and he said, what if it say, I say too. Of course, he was big enough then that he had rode 'em a lot in his life, and one time or the other then, I'd come back. I had to go by this place on my way to play hooky from school every day, so I says, oh, I wish you'd play me that piece again. So about every day, he'd play me the same piece over and over and over. He had a whole bunch of them that he had made up, but he just improvised them as he went along, and he never did play the same piece, no 2 days alike, and he called them all the railroad blues. But then I started to tell you about the common, everyday feeling down in that country, is that for some strange reason there's some people born a little bit better than others, and some are supposed to work pretty hard, and others are supposed to sort of coast through life some way or other. But then, I don't know, I'd never hardly pass either an Indian or a colored boy, because I'm telling you the truth, I learned to like them, especially since I've been hoboing freight training too.
Interestingly enough, my surprise dwindled as I learned about Woody the Rambler, Woody the undercover reporter, and Woody the communist. Woody left Okemah, Oklahoma and started rambling around the country at 17 years old. For him, rambling meant jumping on and off of moving trains as they clattered along the tracks, sleeping in train cars, and running from police officers when the trains pulled into city stops. It also included walking on highways until the pavement seemed to boil under the heat of the sun and start to melt his shoes. Woody wasn't alone in this rambling lifestyle, as many people were migrating around the country in search of survival and opportunity during the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl storms in the states that had been decimated by recurring droughts and destruction of the soil by farmers.
After I was on the highway to California, I made about 3 trips back to Texas and back to Oklahoma and back to California again by freight train, and every time I saw hundreds and thousands of my relatives and the Okies, people from Oklahoma and Arkansas and Texas and New Mexico and Kansas that couldn't live in the drought and in the dust and in the conditions back down in there anymore. They owed more money to the banks than they could ever pay. So they just packed up what little goods they had and took out down the road. And as I rambled around over the country and kept looking at all these people, seeing how they lived outside like coyotes, around in the trees and timber and under the bridges and along all the railroad tracks and in their little shack houses that they built out of cardboard and tow sacks and old corrugated iron that they got out of the dumps. It just struck me to write this song called I Ain't Got No Home in the World Anymore.
Seeing and experiencing all of this suffering and struggling fueled Woody's music as he wrote about the shared despair and collective search for a home in songs like I Ain't Got No Home and Do Re Mi. And Woody's experience in California established his political perspective as he organized unions and started writing for the column Woody Says in the communist newspaper, The People's Daily World. Woody outlined his new political perspective in a letter he wrote to his sister in the late 1930s, featured in the book Pastures of Plenty, a self-portrait. Woody wrote, quote, "In this world, there are two bunches of people, the ones that are rich and the ones that are poor, the ones that do the work and the ones that get the money. The ones that make the big money don't do much work, and some of them don't do any at all. The people like you and me that have always been poor and always had very little and have lived a life of hard times and tough spots, well, we sought to do the work in this old world. And after a bite to eat, a shot of liquor, a movie or two, and a little fun, we're broke again. And we got to go back out and do some work for somebody to get a little bit more money in our pockets to go spend again for some clothes, some groceries, for fun or house rent." Reading this letter emphasized how very little to nothing has changed in this nation's class and caste system. And based on Woody's cadence and tone, he was over it. He saw that this nation and its economy were rigged, and he's explicit in telling as many people about that reality as possible. And this is where his diss tracks come in. One of Woody's first diss tracks was a direct response to the Carter family's rendition of the gospel song Can't Feel at Home in 1931.
This world is not my home, I'm just passing through. My treasures and my hopes are all beyond the blue. For many friends and kindreds have gone on before, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore.
Apparently, migrants would sing this song at the relief camps, and Woody rejected the notion of accepting suffering on earth. He didn't want to wait for a reward in the afterlife. He wanted some good times while he was living. He refused to accept the lack of food or clean water. And he wanted solutions for people who were destitute right now. And he wrote as much in the song, I Ain't Got No Home.
My brothers and my sisters are stranded on this road, a hot and dusty road that 1,000,000 feet have trod. Rich man took my home and drove me from my door, and I ain't got no home in this world anymore.
Not only did Woody use the lyrics to describe the squalor and desperation that he and millions of others were facing and experiencing, but he also placed the blame squarely on the rich, again, highlighting the class divide and the inequitable distribution of wealth in America. Woody's next diss track was in response to a massive hit that is still beloved today, God Bless America.
From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with gold, God bless America, my home, sweet home.
In 1938, Irving Berlin updated God Bless America's lyrics and Kate Smith sang the new rendition. The song flooded the airways as a passionate, patriotic ballad. According to Joe Klein's biography, Woody Guthrie, A Life, quote, "No piece of music had bothered Woody so much since This World Is Not My Home, also known as Can't Feel at Home." To Woody, God Bless America was, quote, "just another of those songs that told people not to worry and to accept their suffering." While Woody steamed with resentment, he started to map out the words for his response song. The reality is he didn't actually write the words down until February 23rd, 1940, when he was in a flea motel in New York City. And the words aren't even the words that we know today. Instead of "This land was made for you and me," the original title and repeated phrase at the end of every verse was "God bless this land for you and me." Also, 2 verses that were originally written are regularly omitted from the song. One of those verses is related to Woody confronting a trespassing sign and ignoring it, and the other is related to hunger. That includes the lyrics, quote, "In the shadow of the steeple, I saw my people. By the relief office, I seen my people as they stood there hungry. I stood there asking, is this land made for you and me?" The original version of this song was all about wealth and equality, access, and of course, rambling across the country. And while Woody wrote the song in 1940, it took another 4 years in between multiple tours with the Merchant Marines in World War II before Woody entered a makeshift recording booth the size of a closet and recorded his song with a new tagline at the end of each verse and a new title. As I read and reread these lyrics, y'all, one glaring issue was nagging at me. Why didn't Woody Guthrie mention Indigenous people when talking about who this land was made for? As Woody told Alan Lomax during their interview years before he recorded the song, he grew up around Indigenous people, as he described the population of Okemah, Oklahoma as 1/4 Indigenous. So he saw them and he saw their plight up close. And as a person who only wrote what he saw, as he wrote at the bottom of the original lyric sheet for "God Bless This Land for You and Me," it's unclear how Woody didn't take a lyric or 2 to recognize that the town where he was born was named after Chief Okemah, a member of the Kickapoo tribe, or how the land where Oklahoma's state lines were haphazardly drawn and where his family tried to build a life was stolen from the Osage Nation and the Quapaw Nation. And before we ask the question of whether or not Woody understood how the U.S. government abused Native Americans and stole land from them, he did feature tribal recognition in other songs. In a 2021 NPR piece by Sam Yellowhorse Kessler, Woody's song "Oklahoma Hills" is highlighted as, quote, "making note of the Osage Nation and including other tribal nations." And Woody also said in a 1949 performance, they used every kind of trick to get these Indians to turn over their lands. So that erasure in what became "This Land Was Made for You and Me" is a bit on the nose. And it makes sense that many Indigenous people abhor one of Woody Guthrie's most famous folk songs, including Buffy St. Marie, a Cree musician who cried on stage in 1966 during Pete Seeger's Rainbow Quest show, while Seeger sang "This Land Was Made for You and Me." In 2017, St. Marie told the Village Voice, quote, "I just cried through it. I thought, this used to be my land. And you guys aren't even smart enough to be sensitive to this." Through the lyrics, it's almost as though Woody deprioritized the historic suffering of Indigenous people while prioritizing the suffering of white people during the Great Depression. It's as though his beliefs about socialism and open access and support for all people didn't include Indigenous people. I mean, even in his interview with Alan Lomax, he did say that he saw inequality at home in Okemah, and unfortunately, his editorial decision to omit Native Americans aligns with the same inequality that he witnessed. Now, before we close out this episode, I want to share some of the research that nearly got left on the cutting room floor. It's time for my favorite segment, One last nugget. In 1950, Woody Guthrie moved into a public housing complex in Brooklyn called Beach Haven. The man who owned the building was Donald Trump's father, Fred Trump. And Woody witnessed how Fred Trump used policies to keep the building segregated and to prevent black people from living there. Rightly pissed off, Woody wrote Old Man Trump, and it went like this.
But I suppose that old man Trump knows just how much racial hatred he stirred up. In that blood pot of human hearts when he drew that color line. Here at his Beach Haven project.
That was Jared Tyler performing Old Man Trump at the Woody Guthrie Center in 2018. Thank you for listening to Archival. This episode was yet another reminder of the layers of U.S. history and how important it is to probe and dig and understand the complexities of this nation. I promise, nothing is innocuous, and every detail leads to an exponential number of additional threads to pull. If you enjoy listening to Archival, rate the show and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And check out the Archival Pod YouTube page to watch full episodes that feature images and videos from the archives. Archival is a production of J. Tolliver Media, LLC.